Gerald Durrell lives in a zoo. 12 years ago, with his wife Jackie, he made his home in this lovely old manor house in Jersey, established a zoo in the parkland round it, and took as his symbol the dodo. Nothing could have been more appropriate, because his zoo, his work, and indeed all his life has been dedicated to the concept of animal conservation. He was born in India and spent a good deal of his childhood in Corfu, and through it all he nursed an undeviating ambition to set up his own zoo. In his teens he became a student keeper at Whipsnade, and when at the age of 21 he inherited £3,000, he spent it all on an animal collecting trip to the Cameroons. This safari was to be the first of many which brought animals not only to this zoo, but to zoos all over the world, and they brought as well a seemingly unending series of best-selling books which have been published in scores of countries. Today, Gerald Durrell's life is firmly centred here in the Channel Islands, in a setting which even he, as a child, could hardly have imagined. The first time we met, Gerry, I think was something like 15 years ago, and you were living then in Bournemouth, and on the lawns outside the house, I remember, there was a tremendous collection of boxes with animals in them. You'd just come back from an animal trip, collecting trip abroad, and all the neighbours were jolly annoyed and so on. I remember you saying to me then, "But you know, Tom, really, what I honestly want is to have a zoo of my own." Well, now you've got one.
Well, I have indeed. But what I was trying to do then, Tom, in Bournemouth, was to try and get the local council interested in having a zoo there. I was going to start it there. And they were so moribund, and eventually we got so many complaints from the neighbours, what with chimpanzees and God knows what in the back garden, that we decided to come to Jersey, where, of course, they welcomed us with open arms, and we've been here ever since.
But I called it your zoo, but it's not really yours, is it?
Oh, no, it's not mine in the sense that I founded it. But I've now turned it into a trust, which now owns the zoo, and I merely run the place for the trust.
Now, I remember when we were talking then, too, your idea of a zoo wasn't the normal conventional one into which people just come and gawp at animals. You had this very deep conservation purpose always, didn't you?
Well, this is my hobby horse. I mean, you start me on this, I'll go on talking for the next 48 years. But I think that zoos should, by and large they don't, I think they should play a much more important part in conservation, both by breeding threatened species in captivity, and also by teaching people that, you know, there are other forms of animal life that exist in the world with them, and that they should get a look in too.
How would you describe this zoo here?
Well, I like to think of it as a sort of stationary Noah's Ark, if you like to put it like that.
Well, you talk a lot now about conservation. You say you could go on for another 49 years about it and so on. But I thought the conservation battle had been won. I mean, every newspaper you open up, last year, conservation year and all this. Isn't it all being done now?
A great deal is being done, but you can never do enough, you know. And also, the thing that worries me is that you'll get a thing on paper that makes it look as though it's absolutely splendid. You know, they pass a rule or a regulation to say so-and-so is protected. But then you go to the actual country concerned and you find that, in fact, this is just paper bluff. It doesn't actually happen.
Could I take you briefly back to your childhood? I mean, you've got this consuming passion for animals now, but did you have it then? I mean, as a child, did you love animals then?
Well, according to my family, from the age of 1.5, 2, I displayed no interest in anything other than animals. And I've been sort of grimly determined to do nothing but animal work ever since. You know, in the very early days, I was born in India, and my ayah used to have to take me out for a walk in the morning and walk in the afternoon. It was a sort of accepted Great White Raj thing, you know. And we had a little tiny local zoo, and every morning she'd say, "Where do you want to go?" And I'd say, "Zoo." And then every afternoon she'd say, "Where do you want to go?" And I'd say, "Zoo." And after about 3 or 4 weeks of this, she got a bit bored, and she said, "Can't we go somewhere else?" And my screams could be heard as far south as Calcutta, you know, if I wasn't taken to the zoo twice a day.
And after you got out of the pram, were you one of these wretched little children who used to carry caterpillars around in matchboxes and things like
that? Yes, I used to go to school with my pockets full of woodlice and slugs and things, and I had a very, very discerning lady teacher who used to pretend that there was nothing she liked better than opening a matchbox full of slugs first thing in the morning, you know. She was very helpful to me in my early career. And then I progressed. We went to live in Greece, and we had things like scorpions and tarantulas and other things. My family viewed with a certain amount of alarm and despondency, I must say.
Now, we've gone past the slug stage now. Looking around your own zoo here, what would you say was your greatest achievement towards conservation?
Well, definitely, without doubt, our breeding of the white-eared pheasants, which are probably extinct in the wild state. We don't know how many there are in China. There are a few in America. And we have the biggest captive breeding stock, which means this is the important thing, that if it is extinct in the wild state, at some future date we've got sufficient in captivity to be able to transplant them back to the wilds when conservation measures are really put into force.
And that's the full circle then?
That's the full circle. This is what we're aiming for.
Where did you get the original pair that you started breeding from, Gerry?
Well, the original pair from which we've bred all these came from Peking Zoo. We're not sure exactly how many they've got in the zoo there, but they sent a pair to an animal dealer in Holland in exchange for some African animals, and he then sold them to us.
What about the prices you have to pay to get animals into the zoo? I mean, if you buy from other zoos, what's the going rate, say, for a lion?
Well, a lion you can pick up for as little as £25, because they're a bit of a glut on the market. You'll pay perhaps, what, £600 for a cheetah, and about the same for a leopard, and we're just having to pay, for example, £4,500 for a male gorilla. So it varies quite a bit.
Quite a bit. 4,500?
Yes.
Gosh. Tell me a little bit about your staff here. I tell you one thing I've noticed, you see. You don't have any such thing as zookeepers, do you?
Well, no, we call them staff. I don't like the term keeper. You know, the connotations of a keeper is rather Victorian. Chap in a peaked cap with a pointed stick, you know. And my staff, by and large, are very dedicated. And most of them are very well qualified. So, you know, I feel the term keeper is rather derogatory. I prefer just to call them the staff.
And what sort of jobs do they do normally here? Their day, for example?
Maintaining and feeding the animals, of course, watching out for sickness and so on, and making notes on their behavior, because we have an enormous card system on every animal. It has 3 cards on which are noted its behavior, its courtship displays, number of young, number of eggs, all this sort of thing goes down. And we're getting masses of brand new information out of our studies of these animals now. So they not only maintain the animals, which is jolly hard work, I might say, but they are also doing a sort of scientific inquiry onto each individual animal.
I'd imagine it's not too easy to get the kind of people you want, is it? To get a member of your staff as dedicated as obviously he's got to be.
No, it isn't easy, and we go through a lot of staff in the sense that a lot of people come to us, and then they find that a lot of people think that working in a zoo consists entirely of standing around posing with a fluffy chimpanzee in your arms, you know. And when they find that it's jolly hard work as well, they don't like it. But we've got a very dedicated staff, picked out of the numbers that have gone through our hands.
I mean, thinking in terms of family pets, a cat or a dog dotes on its master. Does this happen with your staff and particular animals?
Oh, it does indeed, yes. And certain animals, of course, like certain members of the staff more than others. For example, our gorillas, particularly Napongo, the eldest female, she's got a tremendous rapport with Jeremy Mallinson, who's my second in command. And he goes in with her into the cage and talks to her and shares his lunch with her sometimes.
Now, just wait. You just have some minutes. Just say good, aren't you? Good. Got better manners than my children. American Joe.
We've talked a little bit about the cost of animals, but what about the basic economics of running a zoo? I mean, does it just end at buying the animals? Is that the most expensive thing?
No, because a lot of people, you see, come to me and say, please, we'd like to donate an animal to you. What would you like us to buy? And I say, well, this is very kind of you. Could you please donate the cage as well? Because an animal might cost you, say, £350 or £500, and the cage may cost you several £1,000s. They don't really realise this. A good example of this is our bear cage here. Now, I always say that the two most dangerous animals to let loose unsupervised in a zoo are a veterinary surgeon and an architect. And so what we do when it comes to designing new cages, the staff and I get together and we design it purely from the point of view of the animal, first of all, what is essential for the animal, then what is essential from the maintenance point of view, and thirdly, what it's from the public point of view as a display. Now here, I think we've been rather successful. We've created an area which gives him plenty of space, and the use of glass gives you a sort of intimacy with the animal.
We were talking about the cost. How much, in fact, did this one cost?
Ah, well, you see, the bear cost us about £250 and the cage cost us £8,000. That's an example of what I mean.
Yeah. What do you think, Gerry, of the general standards of zoos throughout the world, or in England in particular?
I think it's, on the whole, fairly low. I think there's a lot of tidying up in our own backyard to do, before we can criticise other parts of the world and zookeeping as such. I think this is principally because for years a zoo has been a sort of just purely a showplace. The animals are shoved in a cage purely for the amusement of the public, and very little serious study has gone into the keeping of animals, the breeding of them, and also their likes and dislikes and their wants and so on. But zoos are getting much better. But they've still got a long way to go before they're perfect.
The most fearsome animal I ever remember seeing in a very confined space, and he probably wasn't fearsome to you, was a little chimpanzee called Chumley. He used to crawl all over the place. And I remember the first time I ever interviewed you, he almost bit through the mic cable. What's happened to him?
Yes, I think Chumley's bitten more people in the BBC than practically anybody else. He was quite, that was how many years? Any number
15,
of years.
yeah,
Yes,
almost, yeah.
Yes. Well, he was what, about this big
That's
then?
right.
Yes. Oh, now he's quite a large brute. He's quite a large brute. He weighs about 14, 15 stone now. I can't carry him about as I used to when you saw him. He must have weighed, I suppose, about 15 pounds when you saw him. But he really is a massive creature. Now, he's one of the finest chimpanzees, actually, I've seen. By chimpanzee standards, he's extremely good-looking, very powerful. He's built like a boxer, of course. He's a father 3 times over,
This is an absolutely marvellous place to live, Gerry. I mean, there are very few people, really, who've got a flamingo lake in their garden. Do you get much of a chance yourself to walk around as we're walking around now?
Well, not a great deal in the season. I tend to come out in the grounds sort of first thing in the morning or after 5 o'clock when the crowds have thinned out. Otherwise, I find people interrupt me in what I'm doing,
Crowds of people around. You've been in the zoo business, as it were, for a long time, really, because you were, as a student keeper in your youth at Whipsnade. Have you noticed much of a change in the sort of general public attitude to zoo visiting?
Oh, yes, tremendous. For example, when I was at Whipsnade, one of the sections I worked on had a giraffe, and he'd lost his mate. And so they got a goat to keep him company. It was a regular old billy, with a great beard and horns and so on. And he lived very happily with the giraffe. And people used to come up to the enclosure and they'd say, "Oh, look at the giraffe. Oh, isn't it sweet? He's got a baby." You see, now they'd never make that mistake now. Because there's been so much on film and television about animals, they're much more informed, and so they'd never make a mistake like that. And they ask much more intelligent questions now. They never ask you if you groom the lions, for example. It used to be a favourite when I was working as a keeper.
I tell you one thing I've noticed about your zoo, really, is that you don't have things like elephant rides, and these are the sort of things that children do love, don't they? I mean, have you got a rooted objection to that? I mean, do you think it demeans the animal, or why don't you have elephant rides?
No, it's purely a question of economics, you see. I mean, we are a comparatively small organisation, and we can't afford to maintain huge animals like a giraffe and elephant and rhino throughout the winter, feeding them and heating them and so on. Just so that for the short season we have, comparatively short season, the children can ride on an elephant. It just is not economically viable. And also we like to concentrate on the smaller, more obscure creatures, which you don't normally see in zoos. And these are the ones that really need helping, because there are plenty of people helping giraffe and rhino and so on.
Yes, when you say you don't see these smaller animals in other zoos, my impression is, you know, that they're there, but they're sort of overwhelmed, aren't they?
Well, I think this is very true because, for example, with our marmosets, well, now most zoos have marmosets, but as they're almost inevitably next door to a rhinoceros or a zebra or a giraffe or something, people tend to ignore them and go for the bigger stuff. When they come here and there isn't, by and large, the bigger stuff for them to see, they then concentrate and they come to us and they say, we've never seen those little animals before, isn't it fascinating? And I say, but every zoo you go to has got them. And they say, well, we've never seen them. They think I'm lying half the time.
I tell you what I've been noticing as we've been walking along here. Those two swans, I've never seen swans, you know, all white with black necks. What sort of
They have, funnily enough, they're called black-necked swans. You couldn't guess it. And they come from South America. Actually, the pair we brought back when Jackie and I did an expedition to Argentina, and then we lost the female. So Jackie bought another female as a present for me. This is one of the good things about having a place like this. It solves all your sort of birthday presents and anniversary presents and so on. We just buy each other animals, you see.
It must be a jolly expensive business, though.
It's quite expensive. It allows us to spend more than we would do otherwise, you see, and the other one can't complain.
I was going to ask you, how much time can you allow yourself now to get involved with the animals? I mean, I read a lot of your books, and there's this great feeling of almost personal friendship between you and the animals, but I also get the feeling now that you're a bit remote, aren't you?
Well, I have got a bit desk-bound. Now my main contact with animals is when I go on a collecting trip, of course. But in the zoo I don't get nearly as much time as I would like to keep up a sort of rapport with the animals. And it's difficult because you have to really be with them every day. And I'm sometimes absent for as long as 6 months, you see. They remember me, and I still have a friendly relationship with practically all of them, but I can't handle them in the way that one could if one was dealing with them every day.
One of the things, Gerald, that we haven't talked much about at all is, of course, the thing that started you in this business in the beginning, the question of animal collecting. Now, what started you off on animal collecting?
Well, principally because I was so unintelligent as a youth that there was only one job that I thought really would suit me, because I wanted animals and I wanted travel. And so to become an animal collector seemed to me to be the obvious answer to this. One didn't require qualifications and so on. But in fact, I found that you acquired your qualifications as you went along. And to be a good animal collector, you do need qualifications, not a sort of the BSc or PhD or anything like that, but other sort of qualifications.
How about preparing for a long trip? Say if you were going to Africa now, what sort of preparations would you have to make? What sort of things would you have to take?
Oh, good God. Well, you name it, you have to take it. The average 6-month trip takes 6 months to prepare. This is what a lot of people don't realize. And you've got to take practically everything. You've no idea what you've got to take for a really full-scale trip. I remember once in Argentina, in the customs, as we were going through and we arrived, a customs officer unwrapped a pair of Jackie's silk stockings and found a baby's feeding bottle in it, you see. And he said, "You have no babies?" So I said, "No." And he looked at this bottle. So I said, "Yes, but by the time we leave Argentina, we hope to have 500 babies," meaning the animals, you see. And he looked at me with that sort of expression, "I shall treasure to my dying day."
When you get these animals back and you bring them back to the base camp, and they've basically been animals in the wild, foraging for their own food, how do you know what to feed them?
Well, it's trial and error. I mean, you know, animals are divided into certain categories, so that you know roughly which category this animal belongs in. So you know roughly what sort of food it ought to have and ought to like. So you put in a couple of dishes into its cage as soon as it's settled down, and it takes one look at them and says, "Yeah." So you think, well, all right, let's try something else. So you try something else, and it's by a series of experiments that you find out exactly what will settle it down. You see, the first important psychological thing is to get it to agree to be friends with you.
One has always got this image of animal collectors being like sounders of the river or white hunters. Is it dangerous, Gerry, or not?
No, it's not really. I mean, it's no more dangerous than putting a blindfold on and crossing Piccadilly, you know. It's really only as dangerous as your own stupidity allows it to be. I mean, I've been bitten by animals. I mean, in the course of handling animals, you're bound to get bitten by them. This is not a dangerous thing. I've been bitten by a snake, which scared the pants off me, but this was my own fault because I thought I knew it all, and I thought the snake I picked up was harmless. So, really, you know, it's as safe as having a tea party in Penge.
Reading your books, one gets the feeling that you make friends with animals. I mean, we've talked a little bit about Chumley, and he certainly was a pet of yours. Would you call yourself an animal sentimentalist?
I do hope not. Because by and large, the people who are most sentimental over animals are the worst people to deal with. I adore animals. I love animals. My whole life is animals. And my bank balance, let's face it, is animals too. I'm very grateful to animal life for this. But I do try not to be sentimental over them.
Perhaps we could talk a little bit about now about your writing. I've read a lot of your books, and it always seems to me that they flow very freely and they're easy to read and so on. Do you enjoy your writing?
Actually, I hate writing. I don't like it at all. It's a chore to me. I only write in order to earn the money to do things I really like, which are prowling around different parts of the world looking at animals and bringing animals back here. But writing as such is no pleasure to me. I'm very lazy. I have to be chivied by my wife and my secretary to actually getting down to the thing of writing at all. But once I make up my mind, oh God, you know, there's no more money in the kitty, I've got to do another book in order to go on another trip. Then I get down to it, and then it just comes out and I can do a book in 6 weeks.
I imagine too that your writing helps in the running of this zoo. I mean, not only in your collecting expeditions, but also to run the zoo. Is that a fact?
Well, no, because I mean, the zoo is really the trust, you see. And I don't earn a salary or anything. I just run the place for sheer love of doing it. But I still have to earn my living, which is earned by writing books. The only thing that the trust and the zoo get out of it is the fact that when I go on a trip, in order to get material for a new book, I bring animals back free gratis for the organization, which is a good idea.
Now, you have friends of this zoo all over the world, I know, but you're very much a part of Jersey. Has Jersey got a particular interest in you and the zoo?
Oh yes, tremendously. They've always been exceptionally kind to us from the moment we started. They give us an annual grant, for example. They've lent us half the money for the purchase of the property, which is a tremendous thing to have done. And they also, which we're very proud of course, the first issue of stamps in the decimal currency
they had animals from our trust. And now this is a marvellous bit of publicity, and it also shows that Jersey, for its size, during what was conservation year, probably did more than any other part of the world in a similar area, for conservation by supporting us in this way.
You talk about conservation, and indeed throughout the whole of this conversation, this keeps coming up and so on. I'm sure you won't take it amiss of me if I say that you've only got to open your newspaper now and to find news of war and starving children and so on. How do you reconcile the work that you do with this?
I reconcile it in this way, that human beings have created their own way of life. I mean, if you want to have starving children, you can prevent starving children tomorrow, mate, if you want to. And human beings are so incredibly stupid that they're behaving among themselves and with themselves in such a stupid fashion. But nobody is speaking out on behalf of the animals virtually. There are lots of people who say, well, there's starving children here, or the people who haven't got the vote there, or people who can't write somewhere else, But there are very few people who are advocates for the animals. And animals, after all, can't do it for themselves, They can't stand up on a soapbox in Hyde Park and thump it. They can't grow their hair long and smoke pot. They can't do any of these things to make people take notice of them and force their point home. So it's up to somebody to do it on their behalf, and this is really what I'm trying to do.
Do you, I wonder, sometimes think, in the evenings, in the dark or whatever, that sometimes the forces ranged against you are so strong that the little small bit that you're doing just isn't going to mean very much?
I don't think so entirely. You get depressed, of course. Who doesn't? I mean, any intelligent person looking around the world today gets so depressed they just want to go out and commit suicide instantly. But this is not the answer, is it? No, I think what I really need for what I'm trying to do for the animal life, which has given me so much pleasure, and which I'm trying to help, what I need is more people to join me, more people to become members of my trust, and then to try and teach people through what I write and through what they see here. You see, the average sort of idea of human beings throughout the world, their attitude towards nature is, if it stands still, cut it down, and if it moves, shoot it. I'm trying to here redress the balance a little bit.